Imagine a simple line drawn in haste that sliced through hearts, homes, and history forever. In August 1947, the joy of long-awaited freedom was instantly drowned in a river of blood and tears. For centuries, diverse communities lived side by side in the Indian subcontinent. Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs shared festivals, food, and neighborhoods, woven together in a vibrant, inseparable tapestry of culture and daily life. The British Empire had ruled India for nearly 200 years, extracting immense wealth and maintaining strict control. But by the 20th century, the collective cry for independence had become a deafening roar. As the fight for freedom grew stronger, so did the internal cracks. Political disagreements began to morph into deep religious mistrust, fueled by fear of what the future might hold for minority groups. World War II exhausted the British resources completely. They realized they could no longer hold on to their crown jewel. They decided to leave, but the burning question remained. To whom would they hand power? Muhammad Ali Jinnah championed the two-nation theory. He argued that Muslims needed a separate homeland to safeguard their rights, believing they could not flourish under a Hindu-majority government in a free, independent India. Mahatma Gandhi and others desperately tried to keep the country united. They preached brotherhood and nonviolence, hoping to avoid a split that would tear the ancient fabric of Indian society apart forever. In 1947, Lord Louis Mountbatten arrived as the last Viceroy. His mission was simple but incredibly dangerous: transfer power and get the British out of India as quickly as humanly possible, regardless of consequences. Mountbatten stunned everyone by moving the date of independence forward by 10 months. What should have taken years of careful planning was suddenly compressed into a frantic, reckless race against time. A British lawyer named Cyril Radcliffe was summoned. He had never been to India before, yet he was given just 5 weeks to draw a border across a massive, complex, and populous continent. Radcliffe sat in a room with outdated maps and old census data. He drew lines through villages, farms, and even houses, completely unaware of the chaos his pen was unleashing upon millions of people. People waited anxiously. No one knew if their village would end up in India or Pakistan. Rumors spread like wildfire, creating an atmosphere of paranoia and extreme fear among neighbors who once lived in peace. On August 14th and 15th, Pakistan and India were born. There were speeches and celebrations in the capitals, but in the borderlands, the mood was one of terrifying uncertainty rather than joy. The actual borderlines were not announced until 2 days after independence. For 48 hours, millions of people were technically free, but didn't know which country they actually belonged to or where they stood. Once the lines were known, panic erupted. People realized they were on the wrong side of the border. To stay meant risking death. To leave meant losing everything they had ever known and loved. This triggered the largest mass migration in human history. Over 14 million people packed their meager belongings and began to move. Muslims trekking west and east, while Hindus and Sikhs trekked toward India. Imagine locking the door to your ancestral home, leaving the pot on the stove and the cattle in the shed, knowing in your heart you would never, ever see it again. The wealthy took flights or cars, but the poor had no choice. They loaded bullock carts or simply walked. The roads became rivers of humanity, flowing in opposite, desperate directions across the new borders. Trains became the lifeline and the coffin. They were stuffed to capacity, with people sitting on roofs and hanging off the sides, desperate to escape the rising tide of violence in the villages. Tragedy struck frequently. Trains were ambushed by armed mobs. Trains that left filled with living passengers often arrived at their destinations carrying only silence and the bodies of the dead. Foot convoys, known as kafilas, stretched for miles. Sometimes 50,000 people walked together for safety, kicking up dust that could be seen from miles away, struggling under the hot, unforgiving sun. The journey was grueling. There was little food or water. Cholera broke out. The old and the very young often collapsed by the roadside, left behind in sorrow as the caravan had to move on. To make matters worse, the monsoon rains arrived early that year. The dry, dusty roads turned to thick mud. Rivers flooded, sweeping away exhausted refugees who tried to cross to safety. The police and army were also being divided. In many places, law and order completely collapsed. The protectors became partisans, leaving the vulnerable with absolutely no one to call for help. Villages that had been peaceful for centuries erupted in flames. Neighbors turned on neighbors. The trust built over generations evaporated in a single night of madness and orchestrated violence. Women bore the brunt of this brutality. Thousands were abducted or attacked. Many families, in a twisted act of desperate honor, took the lives of their own daughters to prevent them from being captured. History records the tragic stories of women jumping into village wells to escape mobs. These wells became graves, silent witnesses to the absolute desperation that consumed the Punjab region during those dark days. In the chaos of the migration, countless families were separated. Children got lost in the crushing crowds. Parents cried out names that would never be answered. Many were never reunited with their loved ones. Amidst the darkness, there were flickers of light. Some brave individuals hid their neighbors of opposing faiths, risking their own lives to save others from the mobs of their own community. Delhi was transformed. Tens of thousands of refugees poured into the city, camping in historical forts and open gardens. The city struggled to cope with the influx of broken souls seeking refuge. Similarly, Lahore saw its Hindu and Sikh populations vanish almost overnight. The cultural fabric of the city changed forever as incoming refugees from the east tried to find shelter in abandoned homes. As people fled, their homes were looted and occupied. A lifetime of earnings, heirlooms, and memories were scavenged by strangers. The concept of home became a painful, distant memory for millions.
The new governments of India and Pakistan were overwhelmed. They had just been born and were immediately faced with a humanitarian crisis of biblical proportions. They scrambled to provide aid to the millions displaced.
Massive refugee camps were established. Conditions were squalid. Disease was rampant. Yet for many, these canvas cities were the first place they could sleep without the immediate fear of death. Doctors became street vendors. Lawyers became clerks. People who once owned acres of land now stood in lines for bread. They had to rebuild their identities and livelihoods from absolutely nothing. In Sindh, the migration was different. Many Sindhi Hindus fled by ship to Bombay and Gujarat. They left behind a rich culture and scattered across India, carrying their resilience with them. In the east, Bengal was also divided. While the violence was different in nature than the Punjab, the displacement was equally traumatic, creating a long-lasting refugee crisis that spanned decades. The princely state of Kashmir became a flashpoint. Its undecided status led to the first war between the two new nations almost immediately, adding a military dimension to the partition tragedy. The violence claimed its biggest victim in January 1948. Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated by a fanatic who blamed him for the partition. The father of the nation was gone when he was needed most. Over the next few years, rehabilitation colonies sprang up. The governments built housing and offered loans. Slowly, very slowly, the refugees began to weave themselves into the fabric of their new nations. The physical wounds healed, but the psychological scars remained. The generation that survived partition carried the trauma of witnessing the worst of humanity, passing stories of pain down to their children. The demography of South Asia changed irrevocably. Cities that were once cosmopolitan hubs became monolithic. The rich interplay of cultures was replaced by hardened borders and suspicious neighbors. Today, the Wagah border ceremony displays aggressive nationalism. It serves as a daily reminder of the line drawn in 1947, a line that continues to define the politics and tensions of the region. Despite the division, the people share a common history, language, and culture. The tragedy is that this shared heritage is often overshadowed by the bitter legacy of that bloody August.
The partition of 1947 stands as a stark warning of what happens when politics divides people by religion. It reminds us how quickly civilization can crumble when fear overtakes hope.
We must remember the millions who lost their lives and homes. Their stories are not just history, they are lessons in the value of tolerance, unity, and the fragility of peace.
Thank you for watching this journey through history. If you found this story powerful, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Comment below your thoughts on this tragic event.